Second Dwelling, Part 1. Who are the souls that make it through to the second dwelling, and what are they doing there? I realize that I've written about this at great length in other places, but because I can't remember a thing I've said, I'm sure I'll end up repeating a lot of it here. As long as I say it in some new way, I trust you won't mind too much, since most of us never get tired of the multitude of books that deal with matters of the soul. The second dwelling is for those who have already begun to practice prayer and become aware that it's time to move on beyond the dwelling of entry. But they haven't quite developed the fortitude to avoid falling back into occasions for spiritual error. At least now they understand the danger they are in. They will be striving to flee from serpents and poisonous creatures because they have much clearer sense of how good it is to leave these things behind. Their hope for entering more deeply into the castle is much greater now. But the rooms of the second dwelling are harder to navigate. The souls in the first dwelling have the dubious advantage of being both deaf and dumb. Since they can hear nothing anyway, their inability to speak doesn't bother them too much. To be able to hear, but unable to say anything, is torment. This doesn't mean, of course, that we should yearn for deafness, because it is a wonderful thing to be capable of receiving what is being transmitted to us. These are the souls who hear the Beloved when he calls. They are getting closer to the place where His Majesty dwells, and he is becoming a good neighbor to them. We tend to get lost in our worldly affairs, buying and selling, grasping and indulging, falling into spiritual error, and rising up again. These kinds of spiritual serpents are so virulent and venomous, so numerous and dangerous, that it would be a miracle if we could avoid stumbling over them and falling. Still, this Beloved of ours is merciful and good. Besides, he so deeply longs for our love that he keeps calling us to come closer. This voice of his is so sweet that the poor soul falls apart in the face of her own inability to instantly do whatever he asks of her. And so you can see, hearing him hurts much more than not being able to hear him. I am not saying that God calls to us directly here, as he will do later. For now, his voice reaches us through words spoken by good people, through listening to spiritual talks and reading sacred literature. God calls to us in countless little ways all the time. Through illnesses and suffering and through sorrow, he calls to us. Through a truth glimpsed fleetingly in a state of prayer, he calls to us. No matter how half-hearted such insights may be, God rejoices whenever we learn what he is trying to teach us. Don't underestimate this first favor, friends, or be overly saddened if you cannot respond instantaneously to the call of the Beloved. His Majesty has no trouble waiting for many days, even years, especially when he sees that we are persevering and that our desires are good. Perseverance brings great gains. But the spirit of evil assaults the soul in 1,000 ways now, and her suffering is deeper than it was before. In the first dwelling, she could hear almost nothing, and she resisted less. She was a warrior who had lost hope of victory. The intellect has sharpened now, and the faculties have grown more skillful. The clash of arms and the explosion of mortar are so intense that the soul cannot help but perceive them. Now the little demons present these serpents, which are worldly attachments and earthly pleasures, as if they were abiding realities. They suggest to the soul that in the world she is appreciated, that her friends and relatives are fond of her, that her impulse toward self-mortification is uncomfortable and unhealthy, and raise 1,000 other theoretical impediments. O Jesus, what an uproar the spirits of evil create here! The poor soul is afflicted by such confusion. Should she push on or go back to the first dwelling? When the soul compares all those worldly things to that which she is seeking, reason suggests that they might not be altogether worthless. But faith teaches the soul exactly what will make her whole. Memory demonstrates the impermanence of worldly things, reminding her of the deaths of the people who used to take great pleasure in them. Some of these people died suddenly and were quickly forgotten. Some who enjoyed prosperity are now under the ground. She can reflect on their corpses being consumed by worms. The will, after seeing countless signs of love, inclines the soul to love in return. The will shows the soul that this is a lover who will never leave her, that he walks with her always, giving her life and being. The intellect steps in to help the soul understand that she can never hope to have a better friend as long as she lives. It shows the soul that the world is filled with illusion, and that these pleasures that the spirit of evil is dangling before her come laden with trials and tribulations, with worries and contradictions. It points out that she will find neither security nor peace outside the castle.